Your early morning mentality is your every hour mentality. All gas, no brakes. Focus, purpose, power. Destined for the water, but confident everywhere else. A calming buzz before the storm, truth of nature itself. You can't catch lightning in a bottle. There's a limit out there, but it's not with your gear. Unrelenting power delivery. Unparalleled weight savings. Keeping you on the water, whether you run a 9.9 or outscoping your best 5. In this rare air, there's power in the silence. It's a mindset, thinking only of the things that matter and freeing your mind from the things that you trust.
Big seas, rough conditions, smooth move suspension's the only way to go. And they're absolutely the perfect tool for the job on big water.
I've been running smooth moves for years and I wouldn't run a boat without it. They're easy to install and operate, and they will definitely save your back in rough water and big wind conditions.
I've had both knee and shoulder replacements, and smooth move suspensions really help to take that bone-jarring impact out of those big waves.
Hey everybody, welcome Monday night, right at 7 o'clock, Richard. So you can't be giving me any crap, but welcome to the show. What's up, Rusty? You're late this time. What's up, Dennis? Just got back from Muscatine, and it was a good hot weekend. So we're going to go over a little bit of stuff on Muscatine. Again, a lot of things coming up this weekend. August 10th, we're going to be in Perryville, Missouri for our makeup from July 6th, and we had to postpone that event. So we hope to see you this weekend, August 10th in Perryville, Missouri. Friday night, you can join us downtown on the square. We're going to have our non-mandatory captain's meeting where somebody's going to win a free entry and bags, and we'll have some other fun stuff. We might even have some, that's why I need you to get some of those beer cans. We had some Contrary Brewing Company in Muscatine made us some special beer cans, Twisted Cat Outdoors beer cans. So we'll have to show you some of those. And then we actually got a few extra that we'll sell if anybody didn't get some of those that are wanting to collect one each year. What's up, Jeremy, Jamie, Colton, Seth, Donald, Sean. So again, and then after next weekend, August 17th, we're going to be in St. Joe, Missouri. And then a week off, and then Canton, Missouri for our non-points Jack and Jill $150 entry. Registration will open up this week for that also. That's 2 adults max, 1 female, 1 male, or, a dad can take their daughter or kids, as many kids as you want in the boat. So that'll be a fun one. So again, this weekend, Perryville, Missouri, you don't want to miss it. The big fish are biting. I've seen some pictures. We'll have, the ramps again will be from St. Gen to Red Star Access and Cape. So I know some people have been asking about that. And Sean can't wear a skirt for the Jack and Jill. Good try, though. What's up, Scott? While a few more are jumping on, the recap video from Muscatine is done. So I'll play that real quick and then bring our special guest, one of the OGs, best in the business, Jason Massingale. So enjoy this video real quick, and then we'll get things kicked off. Hey everyone, we're back in Muscatine, Iowa for our second time. Last year was awesome. Again, the city really comes out for this. This year we had 48 teams from 10 states. just in the last week and a half, the waters came down, the ramps have opened up, so these fish haven't really been touched. So anglers are really having to find out what the fish are doing.
Sunshine beating on a good time, $500 from the grave. String band playing more of that honky tonks, pretty young thing going dancing in the rain.
We have a lot of great vendors here today, and we also have beer sales, and we have custom Twisted Cat beer that we have, and the proceeds from that are going to raise funds for a community amphitheater. We also have some local vendors. We have another nonprofit, firefighters, that are raising money, and of course some Twisted Cat vendors as well. So we hope people come out and get their merch. We're just excited to have people enjoying our riverfront. We know it's going to be a great day.
Monster, yeah! 54.55. Let's get a big round of applause.
Three dead in a crash on the number 4. 2 witnesses blown up high. Not sure whose will be done. You can call me a sinner for wondering why. Hey, darling, something on the blacktop. Hey, darling, running through the trees, honey. Hey, darling, leaving for the next time. That's my set sketches of with me.
We're in Muscatine, Iowa, and we're standing by the world's biggest watermelon slice. It weighs 16,000 pounds. Do you think anyone could catch a catfish that big?
Face elsewhere before just as familiar as a bottle in a glass. Hey, darling, something on the blacktop. Hey, darling, through the trees, honey. Hey, darling, leaving for the next step.
That's all we got.
Place 38.88. Terry McKenna, Ray Sanders, $1,920. Second place with 53.07. Tyson Emery, Jesse Ryan, Nathan Dahlstorm, $2,880. Your second place team here in Muscatine, Iowa. Your first place team with 54.55 and Big Fish of 40.41. Brian Wolbert, Scott Beadle. First place, $5,760.
We spotlocked. We drug baits. The big one come off the dragon baits.
So everybody look at Tom, and on 3 say stink bait. 1, 2, 3.
Not sure whose will be done. You can call me a sinner for wondering why. Hey, darling, something on the blacktop.
All right, so that was Muscatine this past weekend again. Liz and I were down in Vicksburg helping George Young with the Mega Bucks and got to help hand the check to Jason Massingale for $100,000 in his team. And then this weekend we were in Muscatine. Next week in Perryville, St. Joe, Jack and Jill, and then the Alton Classic. So real quick, we do have a few left from actually last year. There were some people that messaged us. These were made last year, 2023. And then this is this year's 2024. So these are pretty cool. So we have a few left. If I can spin it the right way. Focus. There you go. I can't read that one. All right. The last quick thing I want to bring up is the points have been updated. And if you haven't seen that yet, there's been quite a few changes. So pull that up, share screen. So as you can tell, we got actually a decent amount of changes in here. So we've got all the way up to Muscatine. So we got 2, 4, 6, 7 events in, and we are going to keep on rolling Perryville, St. Joe, Burlington. a lot of events left. A lot of things can change. So, like I said, right now it takes 710 points to get in the top 26 teams or 26 anglers, and then 535 and 50. So, quite a few people dropped out of the top 50 and quite a few new ones in. So, again, that's posted on the website. You can go to twistedcatoutdoors.com, click the points, and then you can see all the updates. And then I'll make a post also tonight after this podcast. So, here we are. We can finally bring the man, the one and only, a guy that I've been following for a long time. I think I beat you a couple times too, Jason. So I will hold that to you. But I didn't fish this one, so I didn't have a chance. But anyways, Mr. Jason Massingale.
Hey guys, how are y'all?
Good. How we doing, man?
Our heads are still in the clouds and our feet haven't touched the ground. Still can't believe what happened a couple weekends ago. It was amazing.
It was, like I said, it's been we've been doing a ton of traveling and being able to go and help George and the crew and MC with Chris on stage was a blast. And there's so many good anglers. There was, I think, a total of 93 teams, and then 25 go to day 2. And I think we talked on Thursday night, at the casino and talking about, what do you think it'll take? And me and Chris actually had a bet. My bet was 88 and his was 92, and a lot of people thinking it's still going to be in the hundreds because last year, but again, things change. Fishing was not as good because I think the water was so much higher. So I guess we'll just go right into this tournament and then kind of backtrack to kind of your getting into the sport and everything. But when you registered for this tournament, how'd you pre-fish? Did you do some online stuff on Navionics? Did you go down a few weeks early? Kind of give me your whole Megabucks Vicksburg experience.
So, we signed up for this one this year. Daryl and I spent a little bit of time, talking about, how we'd love to see the low conditions that we had the year before probably wouldn't be that low again. And so, we had what we'd been down there the year before. But yeah, we did our usual routine, try to look at the maps, the Google Earths, the bends, the curves. We try to find the low water, high water pictures and try to start putting, kind of question marks on certain areas. But mainly we're able to go down, the river down there is just so much different than what it is, up in the Memphis area, or especially when you get up there, Crystal City, St. Louis, it's just, it's the same, but it's different. A lot of deep water, a lot of slow water. And so we went down there the weekend before. Daryl and I were able to do that. We fished Saturday and Sunday. And found some areas. We found some, what we thought were decent fish. We weren't on nothing, no jumbos, no 60, 70 pound fish, but what we felt were 40 pound fish. Caught some 20s and some 30s. And then came back. I guess it was, I made it down there for the captain's meeting Thursday night, and then went back out on Friday and looked at some of the same areas. Didn't fish them because we kind of knew what we were going to fish. Didn't put a hook in the water there. And then also I tried to find what I call backup spots. And that was kind of our game plan. David Coughlin, for those that's been around the sport for a long time, you made the comment about OGs. David, when you say OG, he's from way back in the day. He's fished with us before. He and I do a whole lot of duck hunting together. And he'd fished, I think, New Madrid. We had the opportunity. We're fortunate enough to pull off a win at New Madrid. He's fished with us there before. So he jumped in the boat with us last minute. And I told David the night before the tournament, I said, hey, we really don't have this master plan of, 10 places, 10 spots we're going to fish. We've got some stretches of bank that look good that are holding fish. And if that falls apart, we're going to go fishing. And he kind of said, well, what do you mean? And I said, that's exactly what I said. If our fish don't bite for us, we're just going to go fishing, which is exactly what ended up happening. Friday I was on the water, that big storm blew up, and that knocked out a lot of fishing Friday afternoon, Friday evening. But we got everything ready, had our rigs tied up, gassed up, everything ready to go. put in that morning and went to our first spot. There was a few boats in the area on that spot. A lot of guys that I know, a lot of guys I call really good fishermen. And years ago that would frustrate people, somebody being on your spot. Now that's just kind of the name of the game. And with these 90, would you say 96 boats? I think that we had, any one of those boats could pull off a win. Without a doubt, they were everybody's contenders, especially in this tournament. And about an hour and a half, 2 hours into the tournament, I don't even know if we even got a bite. I said to Daryl and Dave, I said, hey, we gotta move. And so we took off, went to the spots that I found on Friday that were some feeding fish, had one good bite there on Friday. It was, I would say a 20+ pound fish, but nothing, and nothing of any jumbo, but it was kind of confidence booster. We put a handful of fish in the boat pretty quick on those two little areas that we had found, and mainly flathead. And we don't necessarily target flathead, but 3 fish for 20 pounds isn't going to do it. And so after that, we took off back head hunting, so to speak. And I had found some, or actually Daryl and I had found some isolated wood. And there's not a lot of wood down there. Well, I say there's not. Some guys told stories of a lot of wood, but we hadn't found it yet, so to speak. But found some isolated wood, and I said to Daryl, that wasn't really on my mind when I was headed back up the river. I said, let's drop in here and let's hit this wood real quick. It won't take just a minute. And took off down through there, and David was able to land one for right at 50 pounds. Long story short, ended the first day with, I think we had 85 pounds, and really didn't know if that was going to be enough to make the cut. Fortunately, I think we ended up 15th. But and so many teams, and these guys were super. No one was being overconfident, arrogant, or trash talking. They were just genuinely excited to go into that second day, because they were like, hey, we fished our main spot 1 hour or 2 hours. We quit fishing at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And I mean, they come in with some unbelievable weights, 3 fish for, 110+ pounds. And I told Daryl, I said, it's going to take 150 pounds to win this thing easy, if not more. And so we scrambled, got our stuff together, batteries charging, rigs retied, bait ice back down, and came back the next morning. Started where we left off, and caught 1 fish there, and that was it. And really probably stayed on that spot too long. And I said, guys, we got to go. It's not going to happen. We were still seeing fish, and we were still marking fish, but they were not in the mood to bite. And so went up to the spot I originally had in mind on Saturday. It was a stretch of bank that dropped off from about 18 feet to about 55 feet. And when we got there, I marked fish that I did not see there on Friday. Nice marks, big marks. And in about the first 15 minutes there, Daryl caught that long fish. Well, actually, Daryl caught all 3 fish on Sunday. So, and he caught one for 50, and then we caught another one for right at 50. And we thought, oh man, we may have a chance. We need another kicker fish. Ended up being a 15 pounder. So we went to the scales hoping to cash a check. Yeah, really, honestly, it was just, well, hey, maybe we'll cash a check. I think I posted this on Facebook, but that morning Brooke had asked us, what do we want our intro song to be? And I said, what do you mean by intro song? She said, when y'all are pulling in. David, I looked at Daryl. They didn't say anything, and I said, well, what song y'all want to play? And we don't know. And I said, Bad to the Bone, George Thorogood. And she kind of looked at me, looked at us kind of funny and smiled. And I said, don't worry, we're not on that good a fish. And anyways, we drove off there, and the trash talking ensued, how I had jinxed us. They said, this is going to be embarrassing. We're going to come to the scale with 1 2-pounder. But anyway, we weighed our fish in. Unbelievable. George and the MRM crew, the amount of work that they put into it, the changes they made to the weigh-in, where they staged the boat, kept the boats in the water as long as they could to take care of the fish. Alex, you guys on the microphone, the city, we always, I think I said this, but we always, dream of what can catfish tournaments be. And, when you look at Bassmaster tournaments and those sort of thing, and that was truly the level and caliber of that tournament. The work that went into it was phenomenal. The crowd was unbelievable. The lights, I tell you what, it's catfishing, tournament catfishing has a bright future, and Vicksburg really set the bar on what can happen and what happens when people put in hard work and the sponsors and the city helps out. It was really, it was neat. That experience.
It was so much fun. Like, I mean, you can't watch that on live to understand like what was going on in that building. You know what I mean? It was just so powerful, and I loved it. Like it was a lot of fun. And when you were on stage, I remember because you guys weighed somewhat early.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I knew, like, in my head, I'm thinking if the guys that were on the fish day one, they were on, I mean, we weighed Tudoro and Han early. I'm talking like, I think they got off the water maybe 9:30. They were weighed by noon, eating lunch. We were talking on the mic, throughout the day, they're still hanging out. And I'm thinking, I've seen him do this before. I've seen Benningfield and Ricky do it. Carl Morris came in, same thing, that these guys have been on fish. They were done in an hour.
Yep.
And they got massive weight, and they're hanging out waiting for day two. So you coming back in, or any other angler, thinking there is all these, I mean, even Nooner, I think they were done fishing by 7:30, with the 98 pounds they had, and probably at that point, talking to a lot of them. And that's what's unique, is I get to talk to everybody and kind of find out how the pre-fishing is and all that. He was debating, do you fish and get 110, or is 98 good? Do you risk jeopardizing that spot? And, but yeah, day two, you'd have to be freaking out at 115 pounds, because 25 teams, and if they were on fish like they have been, that might even be 10th place.
Yeah. And none of those guys, I call them one-hit wonders. I mean, they consistently put fish in the boat day after day after day. So, we went and parked our boat, and, Daryl said, well, this won't last long. And they said, what? The hot seat. And I said, well, I'd say that someone's probably beat us by the time we get back in there. So walked in, checked with the guy keeping the scores. He said, nope, that's still y'all. And Daryl even said it. He goes, I'd be a little bit nervous if we had 150 pounds. He said, but 115 is not going to take it. And David said the same thing. Dave goes, he said, probably 150, 160 is what would need. And anyways, all those guys started coming through, and it was, what was big weights the first day was tougher weights the second day. And I don't know, after about 4 or 5 boats, I was kind of scratching my head and saying, surely somebody's going to get on these fish. There's no way this is going to stand for sure. But
so what did you think on, so back to like the fishing, obviously with not being as good as it was, previous year, Vicksburg. We talked about that actually backstage about water levels, so explain the difference in, obviously you've seen some fish with some eggs. You've seen fish that had a lot more water now to swim around, because the water's so much higher. And explain, when the water's so much higher, these fish can go a lot of places that they can't when it's low.
Yeah, when we were there the weekend before Saturday, Daryl and I were talking, and there was literally hundreds of miles of bank that came into play that didn't exist the year before. And what I mean is 40-foot deep water, mile and a half, 2.5 mile an hour current, just hundreds and hundreds of miles of that was out of the water the year before almost, or unfishable. And that really spread the fish out. Something that I thought was neat is coming into the tournament, several of the guys were catching fish that were still holding on to their eggs, meaning that, they probably hadn't spawned. That's always a Ford versus Chevy, argument is, do they spawn more than once, that sort of thing. But these fish, a lot of these fish still had their eggs, and, that kind of played into the factor. Daryl and David and I talked about it. We said, hey, these fish may not be, out in the, normally a falling river, they'll pull to the middle of the river, or at least they'll pull out. And that's kind of why that last spot that we had picked is it was up against the bank, close to the bank, where if those fish still had that on their mind, they were staying close to those areas, and which is also where I found the smaller fish the day before, where they were, really biting. It was right up against the bank. So we kind of talked about staying close to the banks just because of the egg and the spawn scenario. And I, whether that made a difference or not, I don't know, but it did for those, those fish that we caught. We were definitely right up close to the bank. And that's what we think is those fish still had spawning on their mind, or with that big male that we caught that was so beat up, it was obvious he was just off the bed. He had just come off the bed.
That male was beat up too.
Yeah, he had been up a lot of late nights, that's for sure, because he's had sores all over him. His fins wore completely down. David said, he goes, that fish has got a 90-pound head with a 40-pound tail end on him for certain.
Yeah. So back to you're coming down to pre-fish, and whether it's a tournament like this or you're just getting into a tournament, so you're going to go to Vicksburg, and you've already maybe looked on Navionics. Like, what says, do you flip a coin and say, okay, I'm going to go scan south, or I'm going to go scan north, or how do you, like, what does that look like for you?
It is a bit of a coin toss for sure. We had spent a majority of our time downriver the year before. And when we went downriver outside of the depth, not a lot had changed as far as what we were able to find, structure wise, drop wise, cuts, that sort of thing. We saw what we felt was a lot more boats going downriver the weekend before. And so we spent on Saturday or Sunday, we spent more time upriver. We looked up there and kind of made her, that's where we found some fish that were biting. Didn't see as many people. So we were kind of trying to get away from the people. That played a factor. Because, we don't have the opportunity, or at least hadn't had the opportunity to go down there and spend a lot of time prior to a tournament, and jealous of the people that are able to, because I promise you, if we were able to go down there and spend time, a week or two ahead of time, we would too. So just trying to play that into factor, because everybody's looking for fish, dumping bait, that sort of thing. And sometimes those fish get unintentionally, that affects the way they may bite on tournament day. And so we were trying to stay away from maybe where the crowd went, I guess, because the better looking water for us was downriver. But our angle is let's try to go to some areas that may not have as much pressure, with the pre-fishing and that sort of thing.
So you all, and a lot of people probably don't know this, but when you're pre-fishing and you're getting those bites, explain why you're just getting bites and not catching them.
Well, you're making me be honest with you here. Now, we've said this before. We don't, unless it's new water, if we think it's a spot that we're going to fish, we normally don't put on hooks. We clip on baits. I made the comment there. I teased it, and Alex picked up on it. That bite that I got on Friday, it was a big bite. It crushed the bait. It pulled a little drag. So it let me know it was a 20+ pound fish. There's so many times through the years, and we go all the way back when we first started, and you have people tell you, man, I was fishing yesterday and I caught a 70-pounder or 90-pounder or whatever. At least up in this part of the world, very rarely, do those spots hold that many big fish. And if you hook a fish, not to say that it won't happen, because I know stories where people's caught fish, let them go, and caught the same fish again. But normally those big fish don't always bite after you've caught them the day before. So that's what we were doing. I think as fishermen, we're our own worst enemy. We gotta catch a fish to give ourselves the confidence to know they're there or not there. And sometimes when you're scouting new places, that works. Now, with that being said, there's guys out there that finish in the money and win a lot of tournaments, and they don't clip baits. They use hooks when they pre-fish. So it's just whatever whatever fits your game plan the best, I think. But that's just something that we're just being superstitious, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, if you're confident, then that's what matters. Yeah. So I had some people ask me, they wanted to ask you about bait. I had a message today. So when it comes to a tournament like this, and you've got 100 boats showing up and laws are changing and bait's tough to get, do you rely on a bait dealer to say, hey, you know, I need 50 skipjack Thursday night and 50 Friday or 25 Friday? Or what is your, like, what do you do? How do you preserve that bait when you get it? Like, kind of walk us through that.
So when we first got into, catfishing, but also tournament catfishing, at least then, there wasn't any bait dealers. The best thing you could do at that time was say, Alex, if you were going scouting and me and Daryl would go get bait, that was the trade-off. Hey, you tell us what you found, what the fish are liking or don't like, say the Thursday or Friday before the bait, and we're going and getting bait and trying to catch bait for both of us. So we grew up catching our own bait. We prefer to do that if we can, whether that's skipjack or, some of the jumping carp or buffalo or whatever it may be. Because, a lot of times when you're taking care of that bait, obviously you want to, keep it fresh as you can, keep it cool. You don't want it to sit on water too long, those sort of things. So, actually on Wednesday, to talk about the bait saga, I spent Wednesday, I ran up to Kentucky Dam starting to catch our bait. So, that's our, we've always been more, if we can show up on tournament morning with good bait, I would rather have better bait than I would to have river knowledge. Now, some people, they disagree with that. But that for us, when it comes to confidence level, because, if you got good bait, then obviously, it'll keep you from giving up on a spot too soon because, and I guess the story on good bait, early before we even fished a tournament, we're fishing, had some froze bait, good froze bait, fishing cuts. This is before the days of drifting, anchoring, wasn't getting bites, wasn't catching anything, was fishing off, moved to the end of a dike. While we were fishing there, skipjack were jumping. So we caught some skipjack, immediately put those on the hook, started catching fish. And Daryl said, let's go back to that cut that we just fished. And so we just fished that cut, didn't catch a fish on the froze bait. Now it was older froze bait, but still, and went back and immediately caught, like a 25 and a 35 pounder in the first 5-10 minutes there. Now, with that being said, it might not always be that important. I know a lot of good guys that catch bait on Tuesday, Wednesday before and absolutely bring in monsters and win tournament after tournament. So it's all what you get comfortable with. But no, back to answer your question. There's times that I guess if we could confidently book the bait, we probably would. But there's nothing worse, I would think, than to be expecting somebody to be bringing you bait, not for a tournament, and tell you they don't have it. I'd rather spend my day trying to catch that bait. And also, bait catching is probably the most fun you can have, but also the most frustrating you can have, because there's nothing like 1-2 o'clock in the afternoon. You've been there before daylight, and all you've got is 3 skipjack in your boat. When you got a tournament the next day, that's a little difficult too.
Yeah.
But no, taking care of your bait, keeping it off the water, keeping it on ice, keeping it taken, good care of. Definitely not laying it at the bottom of the boat, letting it lay there for a couple, 3 hours before you throw it on ice. That's probably the worst thing that you can do with them too. So, laws are changing with the bait. I know some guys, that do that for a living. That's probably going to change some of the tournament dynamics moving forward. Where guys have been able to book bait, moving, they may not be able to as easy. So that's okay, because that just, you just got to change your approach to things.
Oh yeah.
You probably go back to what we're used to seeing is the day before tournament. There's 20, 30 boats out there trying to catch bait,
Yeah.
But
so you don't use stink bait is what Phil's asking.
Not unless we're fishing for the little bitty eaters, that sort of thing. Those little bitty channel cats like we do here back home. Normally not stink bait, but there's some huge channel cats guys catch up north on that stink bait. So I'm not going to knock it. It works for a lot of people.
Yeah, we big channel cat this weekend was 17 pounds, and that is a big channel cat.
That I bet you that thing fought as hard as a 50 pound blue, without a doubt.
Yeah, and that team got second place, Jesse, Nathan, and Tyson, and they were bumping.
Yeah,
so they were bumping in Muscatine, Iowa.
Huh.
So pretty cool to, You take 2 years ago, nobody was bumping up here, especially for channel cat. Not that I know of. And now, I mean, I'm watching them while I'm setting up, bumping down. I mean, there's so many people doing it. So, you know, I love all these new techniques that, you know, there are some people dragging, anchoring, bumping, drifting, you know, just so pretty cool. So I had another guy, actually, Scott, asked, were you walking baits? Were you anchored? What was your technique? Did you keep the same technique, or did you have to kind of change it around day to day? Or
so we started out drifting and vertical suspending on our first spot. It was a lot deeper water. When I say deeper water, like 60, 80 foot water. And that wasn't really working for us. So when we went to our second spot, we anchored to put, like I said, up close to the bank, put fish in the boat, you know, with that spawning thought in our brains. So we anchored there. On day one, when we moved to the isolated wood, we were drifting that and spot locking that, but mainly drifting before we caught the big fish. And then starting day two, we started drifting, and then we ended up thinking, well, you know, these fish aren't biting. You know, we felt like we could see them, so we spot locked on a couple spots to try to slow our bait presentation down through them. That didn't seem to help. And then, so the last spot that we picked, we were anchored, and then we were walking baits. So we had pinned some baits down just under the boat, and then we were walking baits down through there. And, you know, fishing with a 3-man team, you've got to be a little bit of coordination, because next thing you know, all three of you can be balled up. So we tried to make sure, and each of us have whether it's a different weight and or size bait, to keep distance between ourselves, so we don't all, you know, it does you no good if all three baits are in a 10-yard or 10-foot circle. You know, we try to spread them out. So, you know, Daryl and David were able to get out there, you know, 4 and 5 and 6, 700 feet, you know, and I traditionally fish a heavier weight and stay closer. So that's where we spent the rest of our day and picked up our 2 bigger fish, was walking those baits, slowing down that bait presentation. It seemed to work for us, at least. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so here's just kind of an off subject question. Who runs the trolling motor?
Daryl, without a doubt. Daryl runs the trolling motor. He's better at it, which my brother's been better at me than my whole life. He's 2 years older than me. Yeah, for those that have younger and older siblings, you know, it's always, you know, can you beat your brother? But no, I mean, occasionally I run the trolling motor. But no, Daryl, he's just better at it. Has it now. Every once in a while he'll say, hey, here, and he'll throw me the remote and say, you run it for a while. You know, what I'm doing is not working. And I think that's him being nice and kind. But for whatever reason, you know, sometimes it doesn't take just a little bit, you know, because if Daryl's running slow and I may run a little faster, that may be just what they need to, you know. And we've said this before, anytime we catch a fish, and David, you know, he falls right in, you know, he and I have duck hunted enough together, but anytime we catch a fish, we'll always call out, you know, caught that fish, you know, it was 45 feet deep, and Daryl will say something like, we were drifting, you know, 1 mile an hour, you know, and you kind of call that out to bring a mental note to it. So, you know, you can start putting together a habit, you know, a pattern. A pattern is the right word. And you'd be surprised if you'll just let those fish give you half a chance. You'll realize, hey, we haven't caught a fish over 50 feet deep all day. You know, why are we spending any, you know, we need to concentrate on 50 foot or less, or we caught all our fish drifting 1 point over a mile an hour, not under a mile an hour. And so that helps narrow things down by the end of the day. Putting that pattern together, I guess. But yes, Daryl drives the trolling motor. He's
What about the side of the boat? Do you have a certain side that you're always fishing off of, and he's the other side, or does that change?
I'm on the driver's side most of the time. Now we'll change that to change our luck if it's a bad day. But Daryl's normally on the passenger side, so he can see the trolling motor. One, he can see the trolling motor. 2, he can see the depth finder. So we still have our depth finder on the console. We haven't added one to the back or put one back there yet. Not to say that we won't, because that's really neat. It probably makes life a little easier. But also Daryl said it too. You know, he said me turning around looking up river is not a bad thing, because whether it's a barge or whether it's trees or whatever it may be, you know, we've had barges sneak up on us before and get, you know, really too close, and it was a dangerous scenario. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, it never hurts to have somebody looking up river every once in a while. And that's that depth finder kind of helps achieve that.
Yeah, and again, everybody watching, if you have questions for Jason, now's definitely the time to ask. I had a few actually that I had wrote down here from today when I announced, you know, that we're going to be going live and stuff. But another question I had from a guy was speed. You always hear like 0.8 is supposed to be kind of that like perfect speed. Some people like to go slower. Some people say that it don't matter and they go 2 miles an hour. Do you have what's your thoughts on speed, like when you're bumping? And do you think that matters?
I think Daryl and David's may differ a little bit. But, you know, I think somewhere around that 1 mile an hour is a good place to start. If the fish are really biting, I mean, you can get up there 1.5 miles, you know. You know, my thought process is if it's a tough bite, or if you've got something, a piece of structure that you're really wanting to hit, you really slow down, get down to that 0.8, that 0.5, that 0.4, you know, and really, you know, pick that apart, you know, take that bait down through there real slow. You know, we've repeating ourselves here, but we had a tournament at Metropolis, and there's about 1.5 miles, 1.8 current, and we were fish, and Aaron Wheatley, he was there beside us. He was fishing the same water. Went down through there twice, didn't get a bite. And Daryl said, he said, hold on, we're fishing to do something different. I said, what are we doing? He said, we're going to drag down through them. And I said, do what? And so everyone else is drifting through this group of fish. We take off down through there. We drug through those fish, I think at 2.5, little over 2 miles an hour. And first fish we caught was a 70 pounder. And then backed it up with like a 40 pounder, just bam, bam. And Aaron, he jokingly said, well, if anybody accuses y'all, says y'all are lying, he said, I had to sit there and endure watching y'all catch those 2 fish. And we've laughed about it since. But my point is sometimes speed was maybe what triggers them to bite, you know. So, you know, you got to be willing to do something a little bit different, especially if you know your fish are there. If you know your fish are there, don't try to make those fish bite the way you want them to bite. You know, figure out what it is they want. Is it, you know, small bait, big bait? You know, how quickly is it rattle, no rattle? You know, those sort of things. Because we get stuck in our habits and we try to make these fish bite the way we want them to, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, and here's a question I have. So when Ryan Casey was on a while back, he talked about like over time these fish have kind of evolved and gotten better on different types the way that we're trying to catch them. You know what I mean? So he says, you know, drifting, when it started, he used to be really good at it, catch a lot of fish, bumping and stuff. And he's kind of saying that that's changed a little bit, where you can still obviously catch them, but they're doing some new techniques. What's your thoughts of catfish kind of, you know, maybe getting used to a certain presentation and it's not as easy to catch them like that anymore? What's your thoughts of that?
I think Ryan, well, first of all, Ryan's caught more fish than I'll ever see. So anything he says, I'm definitely going to listen to and not tell him he's wrong. But no, I think he's definitely onto something. You know, when we first started, we started out on the anchor rope and we're fishing tournaments and we're lucky enough to do well. And then James Patterson and Phil King start, you know, they're fishing these tournaments and we're all fishing right there together. They're winning tournaments. And they're telling stories of catching 30 and 40 fish a day. And, you know, that just wasn't happening. So, you know, we learned to drift fish. And I think, you know, he's probably right, because I always thought it's just so many people, these fish are getting beat up so bad from so much pre-fishing that they're no longer in the mood. You know, these fish have been burned. But, you know, that's a good observation. It may just be they've gotten burned on that presentation. You know, if they hit a moving piece of bait, they get a big hook in their mouth. So, I think he's definitely on to something there. You know, those fish, seems like, you know, we've probably done more anchoring just in the past year or two, going and getting back on the anchor than we have in years past. And I think the goal is just, try to put fish in the boat. So yeah, he's probably right. These fish are getting, it's like a bass or anything else. On the new bait that comes out, the fish get used to it. They do something different. So yeah, I'd agree with him.
And it's tough to think like that, but even in the last 2 years, I've been changing. Like I've been slowing my presentation down and doing a lot of spot locking and walking baits, and it's like, I don't know, there's just something to it. It seems like it. And then talking to some other anglers. And so I don't know, it's something to really think about, changing that presentation and, a lot of new rigs coming out, a lot of people drag. I mean, I know some people now that are trying to drag up river in this heavy current. So a lot of different things. It's kind of interesting. Just like Phil Brown said, wheeler fish have adapted and will scare easily by a trolling motor or depth finder ping. And I think, maybe if they get caught once or twice and they notice that ping and I think they're a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah. We noticed on wheeler years ago, when you're going down through there with your trolling motor, you see nothing. But why is it every time we come off a plane, we're marking arcs up off the bottom? And, I told Daryl, I said, no, I said, here, watch. So we get back up on plane and we're in 55, 60 foot of water. Come off a plane, and as that boat's slowing down, you're marking all these fish, and then they all disappear. I said, and Daryl said, he said, these fish have becoming boat smart. They're getting used to these boats. So yeah, you're right. Phillips right on the money. And you would only think there's a matter of time when they hear that pinging and they get hooked. That that may be enough to deter them. But I'll say this. When I talk about us learning to anchor back in the day, we were trying to learn to drift, and we always had the anchor rope and anchor, and we tried, get frustrated, quit. Well, we finally took the anchor out of the boat and made ourselves learn how to drift and do it right. And I guess my point is tournament fishermen today, you got to be able to do it all. You got to be able to have all these techniques in your arsenal, because the guys that are winning these things, some of them may not be telling you, but they're not all doing the same thing. They're putting a twist on it, whatever that may be, and it makes a difference. There's a handful of guys I'd love to jump in the boat with, because I guarantee you, while it may look from a distance, what they're doing is the same as everyone else. They're doing something. Maybe they do or don't know what they're doing. They're doing something that's just different enough to consistently put big fish in the boat.
Yeah. Phil Brown, nothing like a good side drift bite. Yeah, and that's another cool technique I've seen actually in person him do, and do very well at it. So, Tom asked, Jason or Daryl, who has the biggest blue?
Daryl. It's 82, I think it is. It's over in the Bass Pro. It's in the Pyramid there at Memphis. It was a Tunica tournament that they caught, and then I've got one for 79. We got a couple stories of some fish that were unbelievably bigger fish that got off or come unbuttoned. We've had one fish that I'd probably trade every fish I've caught just to see this one. We were anchored on a channel ledge, and it bit, and it slowly pulled drag up and out river. It passed the boat going up river, pulling drag, and that was on a TWC Extreme with one of the big Shimanos, about 7 pounds of drag, 6 pounds of drag, and the fish never knew it was hooked. The drag just slow, steady. I don't know what it was. Might have been a shark, might have been a Loch Ness monster, but it did not act anything like that 79 pounder I caught or that 80 pounder Daryl caught for sure.
Marty Gerloff says, are you normally targeting structure mostly more than you are targeting fish? Obviously we like marking fish, but how often do you find yourself with underwater wood close? That's a good question.
We're normally looking for structure. If the fish are there, that's, but no, and when I say structure meaning wood, drops, rocks, revetment, edge, troughs, the hoopty hoops in the sand, we're marking structure. We don't get too excited if we don't see fish on it, because that bait's your best fish finder that you got. Some of our better spots where we've caught some of the better fish, or bigger fish. Sometimes you don't even mark a fish, on your depth finder, for whatever reason, if they're held close to the bottom. Now, this is obviously higher current areas, that we have had some places there on Wheeler where there's no current and not mark any fish at all and pull up some very nice fish right off the bottom. But answer the question, normally looking for structure, fish being a bonus if you see them on it.
Yeah, I think it's, especially in the current, I think sometimes it's tough to find fish or see them if they're buried. I got live scope on the back of my boat. Granted, I was with Kirk Lucky. It was early spring. Water temp was pretty cold. But I had it dialed in where I was like, we were 30 feet walking bait, and you could see the weight and everything. I wish I would have recorded it. And then out of nowhere, you can just see from the bottom a fish back up and go upwards, like looking down at the bait, and it was pretty cool. So, I mean, you didn't see that fish until it kind of came up. So, yeah, I mean, that's something interesting. But hold on. The hoop-de-hoop, is that like the sand humps?
Yeah, that's the sand. That's the sand
okay.
humps.
I got that's the new term for sand humps, the hoop-de-hoop.
Yeah.
I can't wait to fish some hoop-de-hoop.
Yeah.
Oh, my. That's good. So that's a good question, Marty. Jordan Moss says, how often do you think bait presentation is? Would you rather spend 10 minutes getting the boat situated just right in a tricky spot, or are you just going to do the best you can fast and get baits in the water? So I think he's just saying, like, if you maybe like you marked a fish and you got it, on your sonar that, hey, this fish is right here. I marked it. I went over it twice. Are you going to just like really dial that in or get as close as you can and say, that's okay? Like, what's your thoughts there? Important is that? Yeah,
Daryl's better at that than me. That's why he drives a trolling motor, obviously. And then David with our partner, David being he's the sniper of the group, so to speak, because David, he's really good at that, but also you'll spend a whole lot of time doing that. If that pays off, hey, high five, but that 30, 40 minutes you might burn trying to get on that spot just right. That's a whole lot of fishing you can do in another area. But to answer the question, we'll give it, if we've got a fish marked or a single tree marked, we'll make a couple runs at it, trying to drift at it. That's one of them spots, if you could spot lock above it and walk baits down through it, you're going to use your time more efficiently, because you can do that multiple times. I had a time on the Tennessee River. It was this spring, and I had the toughest time getting, because I had to get above it and to the side the way the current was running to be able to hit this single tree. And I told myself, I said, I'm not leaving until I get hung in this tree. I wish I had a better story to tell you how I caught this huge fish. I picked up like a little 8-pound blue off of it, but the second time down through there, I got hung in the tree. But it did take me a little bit of time because the current, kind of had me thrown off. I had to be over from it, up and over from it, about 30 feet to the side.
So I gotta go ahead.
On my depth finder, it looked like I was straight above this tree, but I knew because I wasn't hitting it, I wasn't hitting the mark, So I just continued to shift over till I was able to feel my bait, hit that tree.
So here's a question I have when it comes to one of my favorite spots, which you probably have to be on the boat when I've been there, but Lower Mississippi River, outside bend, always hot current, really hot current, but it's a huge outside bend. But it's also got a ton of, it's kind of like a sandbar that dumps in, and it's just deep wood. And I mean, when I say wood, like it is wood, there's just wood everywhere. Sometimes it's so hard you just almost get hung up. Would you fish that with just down rods and say, if if you stay at 35 feet, you're probably not going to get hung up? Do you catch many fish like that? Like that, it's you can't really anchor it, you can't really spot lock and walk. It's just terrible stuff to fish, but the fish are stacked there.
There's a couple of teams that I've when we'll be on some of the same stretches of bank, something similar to you described, and it appears that's exactly how they're fishing it. They're dead sticking rods right above the wood, going down over the top of it. And they do really good catch. What we try to do is if we can, we'll have our bumping rods, and then we'll try to run a dead stick, and try to do both techniques at the same time. You won't always catch the most fish off of those dead stick rods, but occasionally you'll catch, the big fish of the tournament like that. But no, that's two approaches. Because, we sometimes, back to trying to catch the fish the way you want to catch them, we think you got to send that bait down through that wood. But occasionally, even in strong current, those fish will be up off that wood, 10 feet, 10, 15 feet. So I think what we're going to try to do is however the fish bite, but no, you can definitely pull them off those areas, especially for the guys that, aren't as comfortable. Some wood is really hanging, some wood's not hanging at all. But if it's in that really hanging wood, I'm not that good at it. I can get hung up. Daryl's joke is the Corps engineer is going to hire me to look for the lost buoy anchors on the sandbars, because I'm guaranteed I can get hung up. If it can get hung up, I can get hung up in it. But I think it's a good technique if that wood's just too big and too hangy. Send those baits.
Yeah, like I said, this is a spot where it's almost impossible to fish or to walk baits, but it's almost like a tornado went through there and it took a bunch of trees. I mean, it's because you can tell that a tornado hadn't gone through, but I don't know if all those trees ended up in this bank, but I've never seen anything like it ever on the Mississippi. And it's just unbelievable, but it's so hard to fish. But I mean, there are a lot of,
if you don't mind, you send me those waypoints. I can look at it for you. I could help you out with that.
But no, I would like to. That's something I've thought about trying, but it's so hard. I personally hate dead sticking because it's kind of boring, and I don't know. I don't know. I like having a hand rod, but it's something I need to really just try to focus on. And some of those spots, it's really tough. But it's just tall, big wood.
Yeah. Sounds like a really good spot.
It is. I mean, I've seen a lot of big fish come out of there.
I think that may be that place where you beat us there on one tournament. I think you might have been on that spot.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's a good spot. Yeah. Tyson Emery said the 17-pound channel cat they caught came off of a dead stick this weekend. So.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. And as Daryl said, that's kind of a free swing. He said, sometimes just add an extra rod or two, especially if it doesn't take much of your time. That's free swings at some fish. I talked to these guys that's been playing with the live scopes on the Mississippi River, and one thing they all say is you can't believe the number of fish that are swimming down the river. And I said, what do you mean? They said you're drifting, and we're looking at the live scope, and there's all these fish swimming left, right, up, down, going all different directions. So if you look at it that way, if you're moving along with the current, there is no current. It's like those fish are in a big lake. So back to Casey's point of using different techniques, that may be something different to try.
Yeah, no, totally. Phil Brown said, I noticed that fish that are 30 pounds or less, I mark them like grains of rice, but really big ones is like a fade mark on the side imaging, so it would be easy to miss them. Are they just moving or just really big that they mark different because they're big and the ping reads them different? What's your thoughts? And I guess maybe what sonar are you using, and give us your thoughts on that.
Right now we've got the Lowrance, and we've got one of the older versions of the Lowrance on. We put that back on. The newer, the Garmins, the Solix, the Humminbird Solixes, they're all really good. I'd agree with him that, the smaller fish show up crisper and the bigger fish are a little bit fuzzier, and not so crisp. I think it's just how it's feeding back to the transducer on those. Some of the big fish if they're down really hard to the bottom, we can't see them as well on the side scan as we can maybe on the 2D down scan. I think the every depth finder kind of has its own little strength, so to speak, and what the Garmin is good at, the Humminbird, making a different area versus the Lowrance, but they're also good right now. I think what we're able to see compared to what we used to be able to see is unbelievable. But I think the big mark, to answer the question, the big arches, they just come back with a different return, so it looks a little softer for whatever the reason that may be.
I think it determines also the speed you have it on. There's a lot of settings on some of these new units where if you messed up and put it on the wrong setting, I mean, it might show real big because you're pinging kind of slow. So I think you got to be careful of your speed. You know, Lowrance has a lot of options. Garmin doesn't really have like a lot of speed options. I've not been with Humminbird for a while, but I went from Lowrance to Garmin. I loved my Lowrance, like the regular HDS live that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And like the 2D, I mean, really just showed awesome.
Yeah.
And then when I went to Garmin, the 2D shows good, but like the fish are so much smaller on the 2D on the Garmin. So it's just kind of unique how you see a lot of difference, you know, from side scan to 2D. You know, I'm usually always scanning with my map side scan and 2D. What is your go-to when you're scanning? Are you just 2D? Are you side scan? Are you both? Or
we're usually running the side scan when we're just looking, and if we're covering new water, we'll push that side scan out, 250, 300 feet. Now, obviously that won't work in 10, 20 foot of water. 10 foot of water, you've got, the deeper the water, the further you can shoot out. Side scan if we're quickly looking. And then also we'll go back and forth between the 2D and side scan on the screen at the same time, because there's a lot you'll miss on that side scan if you got 2D that you can see fish that are just barely, you're not seeing that arch above the bottom. You're seeing just a hump, like as David calls them, turtles. He said, what we need to find is some turtles, and that's those fish that are buried on the bottom. But side scan when we're looking, 2D when we're trying to pick an area apart a little bit better is kind of what we do when we're scanning, when we're looking.
Clay says, what's average size weights you keep in boat for the Mississippi River?
Anywhere from average 3 to 16 ounces, somewhere in that range. Drift weights when we're moving, that's where the 3s to 8s come into play, depending on the size bait and the depth that and what speed you're wanting to move at. Anchor fishing, 12, 16 ounces. We've got some 28s, that you can dead stick with. David, if we let David have his way, we're walking baits and 3.5 mile an hour current at 70 feet using 26, 28 ounce weights, which is a little extreme, but he can sure put big fish in the boat in some scenarios. But answer your question, 3 ounces to 16 ounces is kind of the range that we carry with us all the time.
Has David been one of your biggest influences in catfishing? I guess on to add to that question, I guess give us a little feedback on that, and then we'll kind of start from the beginning of your catfishing history. But tell us a little bit about David and maybe some of the others, because I know some others you've had, like I said, in the 10 years with Twisted Cat. Kind of give us a little bit of insight on that.
I'd say, David's, he and I are, we first met, fishing tournaments, and then a few years into it, got to talking about duck hunting, and that's what we, do a whole lot of duck hunting together. To say influence-wise, probably our biggest influence, I'd say, we talked about Matt Bingham, who first took us fishing. Really, we went on our own in a small little 15-foot John boat, went with Matt, and he really turned us on to, hey, this is how you anchor fish. This is how you anchor a dike or a cut or whatever it may be. And he's probably, without a doubt, one of the biggest influences. And then, learning the anchor, and then you hear about Phil King and James Patterson coming in on winning tournaments drifting, and so those guys really learned a lot from them, not necessarily as much as what they tell you, but just watching them fish. I told when we were first hearing about this drifting, I said, Daryl, all I need to do is see them for about 60 seconds what they're doing. I just how much are they slowing down, how are they doing it. So I'd say those guys. Now, with that being said, I think for us at a weigh-in, just those conversations are influences, because what me and Daryl will do when we're driving home, we'll take every crumb that someone mentioned. Hey, did you talk to Casey Tudorow, did you hear what he said? Did you hear what Jeff Dodd said? Hey, Alex, Alex said they caught their fish, and what we're trying to do is put the pieces together to what we may have missed, or, was there something going on that we, could have done a better job at, so to speak. But no, influences, I'm not going to give David the credit. I don't want to blow his ego out, but, for example, I'll talk about the way David fishes. David, he's like a sniper, meaning if he can get on the fish, and especially if it's a real tough bite, which is what we had for this tournament, David's one of the toughest ones to beat. And not to say that he can't catch fish when they're biting, but that falls into his arsenal of what he's good at, because he's going to take the time and effort to really make sure he puts that bait right in front of those fish, where we or myself may not be as that precise. But influences, Matt Bingham, James Patterson, Phil King, all those guys, Edwards and Kearns, we go up to, we scared to death go up the Ohio River, because Edwards and Kearns are they're kind of like the Mike Tysons of the Ohio River, and to be able to go up and fish against those guys, and I mean they put it on us, and we were able to pull a few out and beat them too. So there's so much history in the world of tournament catfishing, and that we probably only scratched the surface. But there's a lot of these old guys, and people's calling us the old guys now. But the Lindsay Samples, the Chris Trams, John Jameson's been around for a long time. So many people, Rob Benningfield, he must have been fishing in tournaments when he was 12-year-old. Because he was around back in those days, of these old guys where we, all we did was look them up on the internet, weren't even fishing. These guys were winning tournaments. So it's pretty neat, to know the history and see them at the weigh-in.
Yeah, I love it. And really in the last few years, I think you're really starting to see, I always go back to 10 years ago, my first tournament, after I started doing a few of them. I mean, I could probably tell you the top 5-10 boats every tournament, and it's really changing. And I mean, just like you've seen the last couple of years, I mean, in a lot of my events, the mega bucks, I mean, it's anybody's game. And that's why I love fishing tournaments also, because I want to go beat you. You know what I mean? If I win, great. But the fact that I get, to fish against somebody like you, and that one spot that I'm talking about, I was actually got to fish next to Phil King and David Shipman, and they were pretty close to us, and they were fishing different. I was trying to keep that 0.8, and they were just flying by me, and watching them catch fish, it was frustrating. And they're hammers, and they've been doing it a long time. But like I said, that's what's fun, is it kind of gives you that push, hey, there's a lot of good people that I got to chase down and try to beat. And I don't know, I love it.
And I named some names there a while ago, and there's so many I could go on for hours, but Larry Muse, always being able to put big fish in the boat, back in the day, and literally coming to the weigh-in line. And it sounds silly, but being close enough to their boat, and being new to the sport, and looking and seeing, big pieces of bait in the bottom of their boat. And I told Daryl, I said, I don't know if this is how Larry's catching these big fish, but he's running a lot bigger bait than we're used to running, and kind of picking up on those crumbs, and the weigh-in after the tournament, being scared to death to talk to these guys, because you look up to them, and come to find out, they're really good dudes, and they're willing to, while most guys that may not tell you everything, they're definitely going to help you out. If you've got a specific question, and we've always tried to be that the best we can, try to be that same way. Try to help, because, we see people come in that's brand new to the sport, and how quickly, a guy will come to you and say, hey, that's my first tournament I ever fished. And then the next year you see them and they're finishing the money and on multiple tournaments that year, and a guy went from just starting to fish, and then so the learning curve it's exciting to see all the talent that's out there.
Yeah. And really Twisted Cat really started hitting the points championship stuff and the points race the last 2 years really hard. And I love seeing these new anglers that are coming and looking at how they're doing, like Dylan Lawson, Bo Brady, some young kids from Iowa, traveling across the country and doing well to be in the top. like I said, it's it's a lot of those new people that are getting in and they're getting hungry. You know, JT Ray, killing it, Monty Bond, you know, Brian and Coy and Moores and all those guys. Like they're starting to really hone in on their skills, and it's so tough to go out and compete now with some of these anglers.
Yep. Used to, you'd go to a tournament, and if it was a 40 boat tournament, you knew these top 10 boats are going to finish. You know, they're going to be roughly in the top of the pack, and it's just not that way anymore. I mean, a lot of times, if it's a 60 boat tournament, 55 of those boats got a legitimate, and when I say a legitimate chance, I don't mean a lucky bite. I mean a true legitimate chance of winning that tournament, which is good for the sport. You know, it's good to see same teams, you know, win all the time, but by the same token, in some ways, it's not, you know, may deter some people. So I like seeing that, you know, that change at the top. You know, it's fun. It's fun because everybody has, and, you know, you got to have a good day. You know, the big tournament, we fished really clean. I mean, if we missed a bite, it was a small fish. Definitely, we didn't miss any big bites. You know, the fountains, I was able to talk to them after the tournament, and they really had a good fish on. And to hear them describe the fish that they had on, if they were able to catch that fish, the outcome would have been totally different. You know, you got to fish clean.
When I sat in their boat, what was going through your mind when I was sitting on their live well?
I actually thought that there's a good chance that they had it. I thought that you guys somehow knew what they had. You know, in the world of Carl Morris's days, when Carl Morris comes in last, you're probably fixing to get beat. And so I figured that you guys probably had some kind of clue as to what weight they had, and it was going to do one of two things: it's going to church it up, or really, you know, put on the drama. So y'all did a good job. I think I lost a year off my life, but yeah.
But I had no clue what they had, but. You know, and he kind of ran with it, and I jumped in the boat and I sat on the live well, and then I got to peek in, and it was tough because they didn't have a full live well, but I could see two backs. I'm thinking, oh, this could get a little crazy, you know.
Yeah.
But like I said, it was fun, and I feel sorry because I mean, you probably did lose a few years of your life.
Yeah.
In that 5 minutes I was on the mic.
You know, and I was talking about the guys that's been around for a while. You know, the Fountain Brothers have been around. They were around back in that day too. It is apt to say that we're a fan is an understatement. You know, because it's really neat to see these guys that's been around all these years that are still able to get it done. It's just, I don't know, sports. You know, sports a lot of fun, and you know, I think, you know, sometimes catfishermen can be our own worst enemy, and that seemed to be. We're getting past that. We're rising above that, and I think, you know, these tournaments are really showing the caliber of where we're going, or what the sport can be, and what's going to grow to.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's what Nathan said. Time on the water to try to learn something every time out, and you know, just kind of like what Marty said. We didn't have the internet. People learn fast these days. I think that the internet helps, but from a tournament director standpoint, I'm seeing a lot of new anglers spending a lot of time on the water. And I mean, absolutely, like, you know, Dylan Lawson and Bo, like they're putting a lot of time in on the water, and you got to do that. And there's so many guys doing that now that's definitely changing the game. And like you said, you know, with your job and stuff that you have now, it's tough to maybe go get away for a week or two, and somebody can get away for a week can be tough, but it can also burn you. Cause I've seen so many times that I've already had pictures from last weekend. I'm in Muscatine, and I get pictures of these giant fish from Chester or from Perryville, and they're on these patterns. They're on these fish. Well, so much changes, like, you know, I mean, even a day out, let alone 6-7 days. So I think that hurts you too when you go too early and you try to find that pattern, and then it changes. And kind of, I mean, a perfect example, day 2. Megabucks.
Yeah.
Anglers that were on fish hardcore finish in an hour and a half. They're done fishing. What happens day 2? They go there.
Yeah. Nothing.
You know, so then what do you do? Do you scramble? Do you stay on it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know, and you get in that scenario, you know, confidence is at an all-time high. And, you know, and I talked to several of those teams, and a couple of teams said, man, you know, we stayed too long on our spot. We died on our spot today. And then a couple of the teams, you know, they scrambled and responded and was able to put fish in the boat. They just didn't get that. You know, there was a lot of teams on Sunday that were literally one bite away from winning that. And I don't mean like 190-pound bite. I mean, just one. If you go back and look at that, you know, 150, 60-pound bite, they would have easily have won it. You know, we felt like we left the door open with that 15, 16 pounder that we had, and we did. We're just fortunate enough that no one capitalized on that. But yeah, you know, I think, you know, the lesson learned, and we've done it before a bunch, is overconfidence will absolutely kill you. And that's why for a lot of guys, your home water is the toughest water to win on, because you know too much. You know, you know too much about your home water, and sometimes you're fishing on memories of the past, where the guys that were there just the day or two before the tournament are on the pattern, you know, what those fish were doing. So that's just kind of been something we've noticed, I guess.
Yeah, and you take Muscatine this past weekend, first place team, they had a big fish, 40 pounds, but other than that, they had 15 pounds. So they had big fish in first place, but if they didn't catch that 40 pounder, maybe they had 18 pounds. So it's that one bite, being consistent, and they didn't give up either. I think they caught it somewhat later, and there's so many times the last hour you can't give up. Seth Maclow, which he's just out of the top 50, you know, I think he had called me and he's like, man, it's been a rough day. I think it was 11:30 or noon, hadn't got a bite, maybe some gar bite. Seth, if you're on here yet, you can tell us a bit more. But and then he changed everything. He's like, this isn't working. I got to change tactics. And then he showed up last boat and he got on the mic and was kind of taunting first place a little bit and had 3 fish, 3 good channels, enough to get a decent finish. But most people at 11 o'clock or at noon, and they don't have a bite, they're loading up to the trailer. And you can't do that.
Yeah, we've got multiple stories of not having a fish by noon and turn around and we've won a couple tournaments, you know, and not have a fish by noon. We've or at least been able to finish in the money, and just have the most horrible beginning to the day. And you know, that's one of those deals where most people beat themselves. You know, they're upset, they're frustrated, you know, and they're looking to go home. But you know, you got to fish hard, you got to fish all day, and too many times we've had that last hour, you know, might be the difference between, you know, cashing a check or not, or pulling the win out. It happens more than it doesn't, I guess, that last hour. So
do you like 2-day tournaments?
I
hate them. As an angler, I hate them.
You know, after Vicksburg, I love them. You know, they're the greatest thing ever. You know, I don't know. You know, I like the twist that the 2-day tournament does as far as making the cut. You know, that was originally back in the day. There was a 3-day tournament on Wheeler. It was a Bass Pro Championship, and we fished the first 2 days for a cumulative weight, and then the weight started all over on the final day. That's a neat twist. You know, I don't know. 2-day tournaments traditionally do not have the same number of boats as 1-day tournaments do. I completely understand why the cities want to have 2-day tournaments, because there's more motel rooms, more gas, more cheeseburgers, you know. But you know, 1-day tournaments seem to have a better turnout. If you're a guy that's, you know, if you're working and it's difficult to take off, 2-day tournaments are definitely much more difficult compared to a 1-day tournament. I don't know. I'm you know, prior to Vicksburg, I'd say I was a 1-day tournament guy, but after Vicksburg, because we were not on the same caliber of fish that those guys were. We had 85 pounds. They had 120 plus pounds and only fished their spots for an hour or two. So that kind of really puts a twist on it, you know. A friend of mine, he said he wished they'd have 5-day tournaments. He said, because guaranteed the best fisherman will win a 5-day tournament.
Well, I mean, that's back to your 3-day thing. So 2-day combined total, and then it takes you to 3-day. The third day is fresh. I like that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Do you like how Megabucks was with day 1 and then scratch? Everybody's fresh on day 2.
I like that from the strategy play, because the guys that were able to save their fish, that was neat to hear those stories. And I was truly excited for them. I know that sounds funny being a competitor, but I was, Daryl and I and Dave were talking, I said, hey, it's going to be impressive to see what these guys are going to be able to bring in. But also too, there was I think Mike Mitchell had said to us, he said, Jason, he said, we really hadn't fished our big fish spots. He said, we just kind of wanted to catch enough to get in the cut the first day, and then we're going to have our big fish spots tomorrow. And I mean, and he was, there's no trash talking there. He's 100% honest. I guarantee you, he was saving his spots for the second day. And that's what I think is really neat about that tournament is so many top tier guys were on such great fish that first day. Something changed that night. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was, I guess if I knew, I'd never have to work another day. But it was just really amazing how it switched for everybody overnight.
But if you think, and that's what I was going to bring back up, if you think of that about that happens a lot. And I mean, I see it. I got 10 years of data on people having these ridiculous Fridays or Thursdays. I mean, they're on them Thursday. They caught all these good fish. They found them. They're still there. They take Friday off. They go back, and at noon they're loading their boat because they didn't get a bite. Yeah. And they didn't change. They didn't alter. What happened? They didn't move, and they tried to stay on that. Like that happens a lot. And I think again, going back to this megabucks, that happened to some of these anglers that they had an awesome day one. Like, let's quit. It's 8:30. We're done. And then some of them came back and couldn't put it together on day two. Yeah. And that's kind of like that pre-fishing the day before. You know what I mean? Yep. Being able to adapt and change if those fish aren't biting. What do you do?
I think that's the one thing that probably us not having a plan, and I'm repeating myself. I told David, I said, we really don't have a master plan. We're just going fishing. I'm not too sure if that flipping of the script from Saturday night going into Sunday, we quickly moved off what we thought we'd put together on Saturday. We didn't stay on that spot too long and went back on the hunt again. And I think that's what let us find that spot where we popped those two big fish, is because we were just going fishing. That spot, in my mind, it had all the depths that I'm gonna transcend. I'm gonna take a cross section of 15 feet down to 50 feet. If those fish are somewhere in the middle and when they're moving in transition, this might be a good It's kind of like when you drift wheeler and you go straight across the lake. You start in 10 foot, you go to 50 foot, and you're back to 10 foot. You take a cross section and you quickly try to figure out where the fish are. And that's kind of what we were trying to do. Close to the bank, we went from 12, 15 foot, 50 foot. Let's see if this works out. Because if these fish are moving, maybe this gives them, all in one shot. And it worked out for us.
Yeah. So another question, I think Jordan maybe asked it earlier. I'm trying to keep up all the comments, but he asked about tournament fishing, like and taking notes, whether it's a tournament or just regular fishing. But when it comes to a tournament and you talk to people after the tournament, something I've started to do is everything I hear, I write down some water level, water temp, air temp, if there's, the weather patterns, if the water like that 3 or 4 day is the water on a rise or drop. Do you write that stuff down, and do you kind of learn, like, if I went and got my butt kicked last weekend, like I am listening to people talk and trying to get all the information I can, because if I go out there tomorrow and fun fish by myself and don't catch a fish, fishing just sucks and they're not biting. But if you use their tournament out here tomorrow and there's 50 boats go out, I promise you 3 boats are going to have probably some of the best days of fishing they ever had. So you can write that down, learn what they did. You might not always get 100%, but most of the time after the tournament, if you go up to those anglers, you get a lot of good information, and you can start piecing things together, and that is huge. Huge.
I agree without a doubt. When we first got into it, and it's fun to go back and look at them, we would log, we go fishing and we write down all the detail. And what we quickly noticed is, come at least in our latitude, so to speak, on the Mississippi River, come the month of June, you'll go from catching really good fish. The month of June, you won't catch anything. And, 10, 15 fish prior to June, fish the month of June and catch one fish, two fish. But, I think Jason Hamilton, he and I had a conversation the other day, and he said that if that's one of the best piece of advice that I've ever you and your brother, is take notes and write this down. You'll pick up patterns. And yes, you're exactly right. I've written down on tournaments, what guys did, what they said they did, and you can go back and look at that, and you'd be surprised at the crumbs that you'll pick up that you may have looked over. And then also too, not to say that not chasing people's spots, but for example, if I see Chris Stout and Hunter Jones fishing something that's a little out of the ordinary, or what I feel is out of the ordinary, I'm not worried about the spot as much as, hey, and I said, hey, Daryl, did you see where Chris and Hunter were, what they were doing? And then they come into the weigh-in with, 3 fish for 180 pounds, as competitors, we might not tell everything that we know, but I guarantee you, just like you were talking about Ryan Casey being on to something, doing things a little different, fish getting wise to things. If you'll pay attention around you, sometimes even your competitors will give you the clues. Like I said, you don't need to change your technique and try to do exactly what they do, but taking notes, keeping up with those notes, unbelievably invaluable. we do the same.
So that's a big, like I said, this $100,000 biggest payout in catfishing history, which you guys, I've gave you guys a lot of plaques, a lot of checks over the years. But you guys have kind of had, it's been the last 2 years. I don't know how you guys have done. I know that I have maybe beat you in a couple tournaments.
Yeah. We jokingly called it and I'm being serious. We called it the Hall of Fame slump. They vote us into the Hall of Fame, and it's like all of a sudden, there's like a year and a half there. I mean, just, bad luck, just things, missing big bites, things have got to go right to finish in the money. And it's, it's been a difficult, probably last year and a half for sure. We really hadn't been able to put the time in that we've been able to in the past. And I think that, what you said earlier, time on the water is a huge advantage, makes a big difference. And, I don't know, we went into this tournament, I'd say about as low key as we've done any tournament, really and truly. Because, in the end of the day, your nerves are really the one thing that's going to tear you apart and get you off your game. And David made that comment, after the end of the second day. He said, the one thing I've noticed is, he said, we stayed about as calm as a group of guys in tough situations. He said, everybody was on point. We all had a good time. We laughed. No one got, fussy with each other. We all fed off each other. We worked together as a team. And I can't say that, for whatever reason, it was meant to be with 115 pounds. Didn't think that ever hold, but it did.
So I got a question on tournament partners. If you go back, you always, the anglers, the teams that always are consistent and do well. I mean, you can look at the Mega Bucks tournament, a lot of tournaments, my tournaments. It's, if you have a good partner that you can trust, that that you almost don't even have to talk back and forth to each other. You catch a fish and Daryl knows what to do, or David knows what to do. He's getting the net, or he's taking, the trolling motor remote from you. Like, that means so much, I think. And I think that's what helps a lot of these teams be so successful, because you have to have a good tournament partner and you got to click. I think without that, you're going to really struggle.
Yeah, there's a few guys that we fish with that, jump in the boat that, just, felt like you fished with your whole life. And that's what you got to have. Daryl and I, from the ages of, literally 4-year-old, we've been climbing barbed wire fences, sneaking into, neighbors' ponds, and so we've done a lot of fishing together, and there's a whole lot that we do that there's no, I hate to say no verbal communication, but, we each got our own role. I get a kick out of these teams that they'll talk about, here, you bait my hook. I'm not bait, that's for me and Daryl, that's what works, because, Daryl's 6 foot, who knows how tall. And if we're casting and anchoring, it only makes sense him being taller and whatever, he can cast further and do those sort of things. Well, I'm the one baiting the hooks and changing the weights while he's casting, because that gets baits, in the water quicker. Teams that, you don't want to be in, you can have fun competition with your own teammate, but what you don't want to do is it not be fun. I come from a world of duck hunting, and sometimes, I may not be the best shot. And if I know I got to make it count, if I've got somebody in the blind that I know is the very best shot, I'm going to put him on the end of the blind to make it count. And, that's what I was teasing Daryl and David about. I said, my job is to pick the spots. Y'all's job is to, put the fish in the boat. And so you got to, your weakness, your partner's strengths has to complement that. Some guys can spend more time on the water. And that's, I see some successful teams out there that has that opportunity. One team member may have to be at work on Friday till 9 o'clock at night. The other team member has been able to be on the water, Monday, Tuesday, whatever it may be, ahead of the tournament. So, yeah. And, once you got, and especially nowadays, if you've got a good partner and a good team that you fish good with together and you have a good time, at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot better finishes if you're having a good time than you are being stressed and upset, and worried about the rim or whatever.
Do you think now more than ever that tournament partner is starting to become important? Because if you look a lot of the top tournaments, you're starting to see, Benningfield, Izell, Masingale, you're starting to see those same teammates. Look at the top 25, Fountain Brothers, people that work together. I think that's important. And I think now more than ever, obviously the sport's growing. And not that you guys got an easy start because you got it to a long time ago, but I think it's going to be really tough to see somebody to hit the top like what you guys are at. Like, I don't know, there's never going to be another Masingale brothers because I think there's so many people out there that are so good and it's getting so tough.
Yeah. There was a time there, Carl, we were really chasing it, and Carl Morris, was really chasing it. And it was, for us, it was like every tournament, it was Morris and Masingale back and forth. There's just so much more competition. It's anybody's game. Now, do I think there's going to be some teams that are going to come out and do really well like that? Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I think we've got, and what's neat is you'll see people kind of hit a peak, and they'll peak and they'll do really good and have a good run, and things are clicking for them. And I think that's what's fun to watch. But no, to answer your question, what was a 10 boat tournament that 10 guys were going to, so one of those 10 was going to pull out a win? That's easily 3/4, if not the whole field nowadays.
Yeah, I remember my very first tournament. I was in a pontoon in Pool 20 here. It was a 25 boat tournament. I got third place and was super pumped. Then I realized I think there was only 3 boats using cut bait. The rest were using stink bait. But it's changed. You don't have that anymore. Phil Brown a little bit ago said he remembers when you and Daryl bringing a 69 to the Waverly Cats tournament that Doc ran, and he's been hooked ever since. So
that's cool.
So in back to the Missouri, that's always another subject, and I've seen some posts about that today. Doug Evans said, would you fish a mega bucks on the Missouri River? And I always go back to, like, when it comes to tournaments and tournament anglers, what's your thoughts on why is the Midwest, the Mississippi River Valley, the Mississippi River, why are the big names from that? Like, why do you not see, like, to me, it seems like they really, is it because tournaments started and were so big on the Mississippi River years ago?
I think that helps a lot. I guarantee you those guys out Midwest, it's not that they're not good fishermen. They're the best fishermen out there, guys, are the ones that don't even fish tournaments. And I believe that. Without a doubt. I've been around some guys that's never fished tournaments that show me pictures of just phenomenal catches. But no, to answer your question, I think there's a longer history of tournaments, maybe in that area of the country. And, if you got to think about it, for guys that got to work for a living, to be able to come from out west, and to come down to the core of where a lot of these tournaments are, that's so much more difficult for those guys. And so they don't have that opportunity to put themselves out there as much, for those finishes. Doesn't mean that they're not as good fishermen. I mean, these guys on the Missouri River, all those guys up through there, I mean, just killing it. And you'll see a lot of them. They'll come down, into different parts of the country and do really good and finish top and win some tournaments. But to answer your question, I think maybe there's just a longer history and more tournaments for these guys to fish, to put their name up on top. That may be why there's that perception, I guess.
Because you do, when you look at like bigger tournaments across the country, a lot of the traveling teams, from the Midwest. I mean, you got a lot of the Missouri River people. And they travel to Alabama and finish well. You got, there's the Ludkeys and, that whole crew, and from Springfield, Illinois. I mean, them guys are good wherever they go.
Yep.
And maybe it's, some say they've got, the Illinois River, the Missouri River, the Mississippi River, all there, 3 different complete rivers that they put a lot of time in, and they can take all that knowledge and go to the Tennessee River and tackle that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, for sure. There was a guys from Kansas, Kevin Parks and all those guys, out there at Kansas, they come to Alabama to the Sea Art tournament, show out. Guys get on the Mississippi River and show out. So it's, there's a lot of talent, coming. Well, I cannot think of his name, way back in the day, would come down from like South Dakota or North Dakota and fish some of these tournaments, 20 years ago, and he was always finishing the top, in the top paying spots. So it's neat. What I like to see are the guys that will, have got the jobs that allow them to come in and really put the time in and before these tournaments and get ready for them. And that's what's neat to me, because, they said the first time I ever been on this body of water was a week ago. And I spent the past week and was able to put something together. I think that's fun to watch too.
Yeah, and then I mean, even like John Berglund, Eddie Henney, coming from Kansas, and there's a lot of other anglers coming from over, but I mean, those guys are really good where they go too. I mean, very good.
John, I've been both those guys. John, been real impressed. He actually helped us put a deep freeze on Sunday night in the back of the boat or back of the truck, trying to get out of Vicksburg. But those guys, they can put a big fish. They could fish in a city park and catch a 60-pounder. And it's just neat watching these guys that, while they may have been fishing their whole life, they're kind of new to this sport, and it's really impressive the amount of big fish that these people can put in the boat.
Yeah, let's see if I missed any questions. Yeah, Marty Gerloff and Roger. I mean, 2 other anglers we ain't seen a lot of lately. Roger's living the high life, I think, in Arizona and stuff. But
we don't need them. We don't need them getting back together and fishing these tournaments. For because those guys, guarantee you put them in a boat tomorrow, give them a day or 2, and they'd be right back on top again, without a doubt. Good guys. And what I really liked about the Gerloff brothers is, after the tournament, they would absolutely share everything that they learned, what they caught, what did and didn't work for them, and that's what, if there's guys that's on that listening, if you go to one of these tournaments, even if you're not a tournament fisherman, hang out after the tournament, after the weights, and just listen to the fishermen talk to each other. They're sharing information that would take years to learn. That just hang out and be within earshot of them. I guarantee you, your fishing IQ will increase considerably, especially for these big catfish.
100%. I mean, I think it's made me so much better angler. These tournaments and listening to people, and the dinners after the tournament. I mean, there's just so much. Now the dinners, the night before the tournament, you don't want to take too much in, but after the tournament, everybody opens up and talks, and that's where you learn a ton of stuff. In the weigh-in line, when you're or after you weigh in and you're kind of hanging out watching the rest of the people weigh in, you can learn a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I used to tease Jeff Dodd, the night before the tournament. He always accused us of being snobs, going to the room, out in the parking lot and talk. I said, Jeff, there's nothing being learned in that parking lot the night before the tournament. I go, it's all everybody, teasing and sending people the wrong direction. I said, it's after that weigh-in is when the secrets usually get shared.
Yeah. Bobby said, Daryl Carter from South Dakota?
I think that might have been him. I'm talking back, late 90s, early 2000s. He come down from South Dakota because he was definitely, not from one of the local Tennessee, Alabama, that part of the world, and he was able to come in consistently finishing the money. He was good.
Yeah, that Missouri River, I'm telling you, has got two things. I always say the Missouri River holds the biggest fish.
Right.
Maybe not as many as the Mississippi River. What's your thoughts of that? Why do you think, in 10 years, I've weighed 3 fish over 100 pounds, 2 of them on the Missouri River, the third one at the confluence. We'll just say the Missouri.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think these big fish move. Last year they were definitely, up and around the St. Louis area. There's been years ago, they seemed to settle in down there in the, New Madrid area, had some phenomenal times there. Missouri seems to always have them. Some of the guys you talk about high water, if there's high water winter, it's going to pull all them fish up into the Missouri. That seems to hold true. But, I'd like, if I can ever get some time off, I'd like to spend some time on that upper Missouri River and do a lot of looking, because those guys catch and consistently catch big fish every weekend up there. Obviously it's got to be bait. That river's probably got a lot of bait in it that seem to help hold them up there. But I think the fish move. Some years, if it's a bad Missouri River spring, it's a better chance that these fish are going to settle in maybe a little further down, closer to us. It's neat to hear all the tagging and things they're doing with these fish. I'd like to see, some of the DNRs and the game and fishes do a little bit more of that to learn more about these fish, especially these trophy fish, because I think these things move a lot more than what we think that they do.
Yeah, I just wrote that down because the Fishing for Freedom event we had on pool 19 and 20, right below the 19 lock, Cody Vickers caught that fish I showed a few weeks ago. It was tagged like 3 pools down, and it'll be like Bowling Green, what's below Bowling Green, whatever that is. And in a week, that fish had traveled through 3 dams.
That's amazing.
So, and there's some more tagging on that. So I want to get a hold of those guys, talk about that. I really want to do some more tagging and stuff. Clarksville's what Jordan said. So
gotcha.
That's incredible info. And it was only like a 7 or 11 pound blue, and you could tell it was just tagged. Like it had the stitching and everything.
Hey, wow.
So that was pretty cool. So I want to kind of talk to I think the Corps. What's weird is the Corps was doing that.
Huh.
So
okay.
I want to do a little bit more looking into that and see. So Lee Reed said Daryl and Pat Carter. So I'm gonna have to look him up, see who that is. See if we can't bring them out of retirement.
There we go.
Here's another one that I've done before. Chris Parker said, should there be a no fish period during these big tournaments? So I think you remember this 2 years ago in Cape, I did a no pre-fishing championship. So from the tournament was Saturday, from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you couldn't be on the water from this stretch to this stretch, which you couldn't get to on Saturday. On Friday, you could go from like 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. You could go on the water, and I don't think you could fish. I think you could just scan. I'm losing my mind. I can't remember what. But anyways, it was kind of cool. Now, I'm not saying it was because of that. Now, the Twisted Cat Championships are typically a 22 boat field. That championship was an insane weigh, and I think we had 2 or 3 fish in the 90s.
Yeah.
Mike Mitchell was one, Blair, but it was a crazy weigh-in, and who knows? Could it have been because of no pre-fishing? I think a couple things, like for Chris to understand on the tournament director side of things, pre-fishing also, a lot of these cities that fund an event, they're giving you funds to bring you to that city because they want you guys there spending money, eating food, staying in hotels, getting fuel, and so on, and enjoying your time there. But on the flip side, it's 2 ways. Like, I kind of like the no fish deal if because, you know, if a guy can go spend Monday through Friday there and then the other team can't go until Friday, it puts everybody on that same playing field. And I wanted to do that for the championship. But it is tough on a director standpoint, bringing that event to do that, unless it's some kind of unique event. But what's your thoughts on that no pre-fishing?
I think that the no pre-fishing, you're going to put a lot, the weight's going to be a lot bigger on tournament day, just because of that, because you're protecting the fishermen from themselves, from burning their own spots. I think that no pre-fishing, not that happens, and I don't think people are doing it intentionally, but it keeps them from maybe burning other people's spots. You know, because if you're catching fish, you know, someone else, that may be their number one bank, you know, and it may not be yours. So overall, the weigh-ins, I feel, are going to be better with the no pre-fishing. But the business of it is these cities, these chamber of commerces, you know, they pitch in the money because they need the motel rooms, gasoline, those sort of things. So it's a bit of a hard sell to talk them into giving you money to host a tournament when you're telling fishermen they can't come down or can't fish, you know, before the tournament. And so, you know, as a competitor, you know, if I was the type of guy that was able to spend all week, every week, I wouldn't like the ideal of not being able to pre-fish. But if you want to level the playing field, you know, other tournament series do this same thing. They don't allow them to fish for a certain amount of time prior to the tournament. And the reason why is they want to level that playing field. So it's something to consider. I like the ideal of no pre-fishing because I think you're gonna have bigger weights at those weigh-ins.
Yeah, like I said, when I did it in Cape 2 years ago, I really enjoyed it. Because it was a spot where some people that were close by could go burn it up.
Yep.
And the people that couldn't get down there. You know, and then last year I had it at Lake Ouachita, which really nobody have ever been there. So I didn't have it that time. I did have Friday where you couldn't have rods or bait in the water. I guess what if you did a no pre-fishing where it was you could go on the water, but you couldn't put any lines in the water?
Yeah, I think we definitely make sure you got your guys with the polygraphs, you know, everybody there to make sure everybody followed the rules. But I think that'd be fair because you wouldn't burn your spots, you wouldn't burn your fish, you know, whether intentional or unintentional. You would save that, you know, give them that break, and make for better weigh-ins. You know, so many times we've had people come up to us and they'll be like, "Oh man, you know, those fish weren't on that bank, were they?" And I said, well, you know, we found them there the weekend before, and then they'll tell you, well, you know, I fished there on Tuesday and caught a 60 and a 50, and I fished there on Wednesday and caught 2 50s off of it, and then I fished there on Thursday and caught a 80 and a 40, and then, you know, and you wonder why they didn't bite on tournament day. You know, I think sometimes unintentionally we burn our spots, our own worst enemies. You know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hope that answers your question, Chris. John Ed's asking, what's the guy got to do to get a few lessons?
Just jump in the boat.
And then I got another question. Who is your biggest rival when it comes to tournament fishing? Who are you like, I got to go fish against him, or I got to beat him? Like, who is that rival? Is it a team? Is it an angler?
Man, I don't, you know, for the longest when we first got into it, you know, Phil King, you know, we always, you know, it didn't matter if we won or not, as long as we were able to do better than Phil King, because, you know, he's always been able to do be a great fisherman. And I wouldn't call that a rivalry as much as it was maybe a measuring bar out of respect. You know, I don't know, you know, rival, you know, at one time it was us, you know, Carl, you know, us and Carl going back and forth. But in a good way. You know, to say rival, I don't know if that's the right way to say it. You know, there's guys that I think are on top of their game that we definitely, if we go to a tournament, that's who we want to beat, because we know they're going to consistently put fish in the boat, and to be able to beat them would be an accomplishment. But I don't know if rival is the right word to say, because maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but it seems to be catfishermen, especially guys that are on top of their game, are getting along. Everyone's working together. Everyone's friendly. you're seeing everyone's talking before the tournaments, being social, that you probably didn't see some 15 years ago, not as much at least, because I think a lot of people was just taking it way too serious. But no,
yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of fun now and camaraderie, around behind the scenes, the night before and all that stuff. But, yeah.
I don't yet to say rival. It's probably, there's guys, like for example, if Jeff or Roy or whoever, guys that what I consider to be good friends with, we're talking about, the fishing the tournament in Savannah in the fall. David's probably going to fish with one of his friends there. So, there'll be a definite rivalry there. Guys that you fished with before that well, there's a friendly rivalry there. What I don't want to do is somebody that I don't know say that they're a rival, because what I'm saying is I've got the utmost respect for them because I know they're going to be hard to beat. So, but yeah.
Let's see. There's one other. Well, real quick, one more thing I wanted to get into, and then we're gonna have to make this like a part 2 at some point with you on here. But
you're gonna have to part 2 with my brother. You're gonna have to get both. I told Daryl he was next.
So when it comes, as the sport's growing and people always talk about sponsorships and sponsors, like, I guess you can maybe tell us your sponsors, and then tell us, if there's some keys to, hey, you're wanting to get a sponsor, this is what I did, this is what you can do, give, what I mean? Give kind of a little bit of background on sponsorships and how it's worked for you, because you got some really good sponsors.
So early on, we first got into the sport, we got a boat. We had a small boat. We ordered a Sea Arc boat, and we got it on the Sunday before a tournament in New Madrid. Worked all day, stayed up every night till 3 a.m, putting it together, pulling an old 115 horse 2-stroke motor off of a bass boat, putting on the back of it, and doing all those sort of things. But anyways, early on, we're able to get some early success. And I think we were able to win, not our first tournament there, but we won a tournament at New Madrid. And, the guy that I talked about, Phil King, he come over to us. I didn't know him. He come over and shook our hand, told us good job. And he said, you young men, he said, y'all did good today. He said, y'all, I think you got a good future ahead of you. He said, let me give you some advice. And I said, yes, sir. What's that? And he said, always take the higher road. And I said, do what? And he said, don't let nobody drag you down into any squabbles or any drama. He said, if you got something to say it to the person. Don't say it to everybody. And, I got it and got in the truck on the ride home. And I said, you're not going to believe what Phil said. And I told Daryl that. And, that was probably some really good advice. The reason I say that is, sponsors, they're not always looking for the best catfishermen. They're not always looking for the best fishermen. They're looking for who might represent their product the best. And one way to not get sponsors is to be somebody that there's always some controversy around, some drama. If you're publicly complaining about something. So if there's somebody that that's some advice. Maybe what Phil gave us is take the higher road. And there's always a better way to handle a situation. And don't do it publicly, and whatever that may be. I think that obviously, fish with a product that you believe in, and promote a good image, and then also, just because you send an application, a resume, a fishing resume, or whatever it may be, to a manufacturer, they're not always going to respond to you immediately, and sponsor you right off the bat. I truly feel, I don't, while Steve at Sea Arc won't admit to it, we sent them a resume, said we'd like to be on your pro staff. And a lot of times those sponsors will put you on a watch list, and they're going to start watching you and following you, whether it be social media, whether it be internet, whatever it may be, and seeing how you behave. And if there's some advice, be professional, take the higher road, and always, promote the positive in something, whatever that may be. Would be one. Two, there's a lot of great products out there. Some are better than others in certain ways, but there's no such thing as a bad product, because that's somebody's livelihood. Someone's trying to make a living, and to down another product there's nothing professional about that, and I'd say stay away from doing something similar to that. While we've provided feedback to companies on what we felt they might could do better, what we don't want to do is get on a public forum and promote that. You're not going to get rich, on the sponsors. The money's not in catfishing yet to make a living off of catfishing and the sponsors. And you got to have real expectations. If they're able to, help you with free product, and it's a product that you believe in and use, don't sell yourself short and go with something that you don't believe in. Fish with the products that you trust and know. We've got, Sea Arc Boats has been phenomenal. We've been with them, or they've been with, however you want to say it. We've been fortunate enough to be a part of that team for a very long time. Steve Douglas with Monster Rod Holders. We've been with him for a very long time. A great product. It does go a lot for the sport. Team Catfish. Been with it for a very long time. TWC, Jerry Klein, Tangle with Catfish Rods. Amazing product. They've been around for a long time. We still have some of the original TWC rods that we bought back in the day, and still fish with those things. Jerry fusses at us and tells us, hey, I can give you a new rod if you need one, but chiller bait tanks. That's something new that we're getting in and learning, because I think that's the next curve in the edge, is being able to keep your bait alive longer. We're behind the 8 ball, I think, maybe to some of these fishermen that are out there, but chiller bait tanks, they've worked with us and we're learning that. And then, Pro Guide batteries, these new lithium batteries, they really good product that's held up and great customer service. What you got to remember is you are an extension of that company. If they're sponsoring you, if they're giving you product, you're an extension of that company, and you got to remember that. And always try to, that's the best way you can show them thanks is maintaining that professionalism.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you and Daryl are some of the top, probably the top, anglers to watch when it comes to that. I've been watching you guys for a long time, talked to you guys for over 10 years about that. And you guys have really helped help mold me to where I'm at. And again, back to what you're saying, if you're after a company, don't go and say, hey, can you send me some of your product and you've never used it before? Use their product, trust the product, don't use it. And then 3 weeks later they say, well, no, because they're not ready for you because you may be on that watch list, and then you go to another brand. You got to have, what is the ROI that you're going to bring that company? What's the return on investment? Yep. Is it worth it? Is it not? And definitely the social media thing or public, two big things is, number one, what you say at a tournament or how you act, or if you make a big negative post and whether you take it off, the second you make that negative post, that's there forever. Yep. And then that person that sees it, that business owner, will never forget that. And that's a big thing. So, you don't want to be supported, or nobody's going to support that when they got to worry about Facebook post or Instagram or things going haywire. Yep. And again, like I said, you guys have been with the same companies. You guys have been positive. And another thing is, like, there's things that you guys have done that I personally know that maybe nobody else can find out, because you went to an event that had no social media or no coverage, but you did it because that pays off in the long run. That, taking a kid fishing or taking a person that you from your work fishing, like, that's the stuff that pays off to help grow the sport. And that's a big thing. Yeah. And again, being positive like you guys are is huge. And like I said, you guys are very, very positive. At the tournaments, how many people have came up to me and said, hey, I just wanted to tell you, those two guys, those two brothers, they spent time talking to me. This was my first tournament. This happened several times with you guys. And New Mattered is what was the first one. This is my first tournament I ever fished. It was two younger kids. And they said, these guys talked to me in the crowd while after they weighed in, and there's other boats and they're still watching the weigh-in. They spent time to talk to us and give us some advice. And there's so many people, whether you did bad, like I see anglers come through or they don't weigh in at all. They load their boat at noon and go home. Like, go spend time in that community at the weigh-in and hang out and talk to people, because that's how you guys help make your name, talking to people, and people look up to you. And I mean, there's people that you guys are signing hats for this weekend. That wouldn't happen if you didn't do what you've done in the past.
Yeah. I'd say something else too is, if you have sponsors, you owe it to them to come through the weigh-in line. If you've caught a fish, whether, even if you're not going to finish in the money, you'll come through that weigh-in line, because that shows class. Now, obviously, if you've got problems at home, need to get home, some of you guys, obviously farmers, whatever it may be, you got to get home. That's, completely understandable. But if you're able to come through that weigh-in line, weigh those fish, talk to those people, because that's what's going to grow the sport. We don't do near enough. There's guys out there that are doing, unbelievable what they're doing to promote the sport by taking people fishing, taking new people that are to the sport fishing. But I remember, and I'll make it real quick, first tournament we ever went to that we talked about, we got there, we didn't put our boat in the water because we scared to death. We let everyone take off and launch and go and do, and then we put our boat in, 30 minutes later, and went through the weigh-in line, and so we remember what it's like to be first timers there, afraid, and we were afraid to talk and at anybody, and so we try to make it a point. We know what it's like to be in their shoes, and want to make them feel welcome, for sure. And then in the end, we're there to have fun. We're there, everyone's there to have fun, catch fish, and if we can help somebody do a better job catching fish, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. Yes. So hopefully everybody got some great advice tonight. Picked up one thing and take it and become a better angler, better person, whether it's sponsorship, fishing, any of that stuff. And so Daryl will have to be a part 2.
Yep.
I guess
he's hopefully y'all save your questions for him, pick him apart. He's the brains of the group. So y'all, get him some tough questions.
Yeah. Well, Jason, thank you guys. Everybody hit the like button and thank Jason for being on here again. Thanks for spending 2 hours and 2 minutes with me on a Monday night. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure I'll see you soon. Congratulations again on winning $100,000, you, David, and Daryl. And that's you're probably still coming down off that stress level that I gave you when I was at Donnie and Lonnie's boat.
I lost a couple years, but no, it just truly humbled to pull off that win. And I feel, and the thing is, we snuck it, we pulled it off, and it worked out. But yeah, still on cloud 9. We're so excited.
Awesome. Well, again, congratulations. Thanks for spending some time with me. And next Monday, we'll have another special guest on and be talking about the Perryville, Missouri event that's this Saturday. Hope you join us for stop number 8 on the tournament trail. And it's going to be a fun one. And again, everybody have a good evening, good week. And this Friday, Perryville, Missouri will be downtown. It's going to be a lot of fun. There'll be some bands. And again, another city like Vicksburg that's really wanting to grow catfishing in their city. And I think this is the one that's going to do it. So pretty excited about that. So again, Jason, thanks. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you this weekend in Perryville, Missouri.
All right. See you guys.